3 dangerous men vanished from a maximum security prison. No tunnels, no overpowered guards, just gone. For 6 months, they plotted their escape from one of the most secure facilities in the country, meticulously planning every detail. The mastermind was Hossein Nayeri, an Iranian-American psychopath manipulator so dangerous that he could bend anyone to his will. Their escape plan? Bedsheets, hacksaws, and a single cell phone. But what started as a well-orchestrated plan quickly turned into a desperate fight for survival when greed and betrayal entered the mix. This is a story full of shocking twists and unexpected turns, so stay tuned until the very end because you won't believe what happens next. Orange County Men's Jail, 2016, a 5-story fortress built to contain the most dangerous criminals. Inside, over 60 inmates crammed together in massive dormitories, constantly under the watchful eyes of patrolling guards. No privacy, nowhere to hide, and for most, no way out. But for Nayeri, it was an opportunity. Born to Persian immigrants in Fresno, he was intelligent and charismatic, but always sought to challenge authority. A short stint in the Marines ended with a discharge, and by 2012, he was wanted for kidnapping and torturing a dispensary owner in the Mojave Desert. He fled to Iran, escaping justice, but was eventually lured back using his ex-wife as bait. Facing a life sentence, Nayeri knew his only shot at freedom was to escape before trial. From the moment he was placed in Orange County Jail for men, his sharp eyes scanned for weaknesses. He spotted one, a ventilation grate behind a bunk. It seemed insignificant to others, but to Nayeri it was a potential way out. Breaking through it, however, required tools and patience. He needed a team. He found his partners in Bac Duong, a seasoned gang member with deep street connections, and Jonathan Tew, a younger inmate tied to a Vietnamese gang. Together, they devised an intricate escape plan. Bac used his network to smuggle in a hacksaw, hidden from the guards' prying eyes. Each night, after the guards made their rounds, they worked in complete silence, sawing through the bed frame blocking the vent. After 16 nights of tension, they finally broke through the frame. But their challenges were far from over. The vent system was a labyrinth of narrow ducts, twisting pipes, and hidden barriers. They needed light to navigate it without getting lost or trapped. Once again, Bac delivered, this time a smuggled cell phone. The phone's flashlight illuminated the dark passages, revealing the complexity of their escape route. They crawled through the suffocating vents, recording their progress and taking calculated risks at every turn. The air was heavy, the space claustrophobic, and the constant fear of discovery loomed over them. Eventually, they reached an exit, but it was 12 feet above them, sealed by iron bars. Cutting through could take months, and time was not on their side. With Nayeri's trial fast approaching, hesitation could mean disaster. They needed a better solution, and quickly. Determined to find another way, Nayeri realized they needed a map, a way to see the jail's layout from above. Satellite imagery could be their answer, but inside the jail, access to the internet was impossible. That's when Nayeri's manipulative instincts kicked in. He began observing the staff, searching for someone vulnerable enough to exploit. Then, he found her. Nusha Farin Ravagi, an ESL teacher, had a background that gave him an advantage. His English was flawless, but he used the classes as a way to get close to her. Nusa, as the inmates called her, was kind-hearted and naive. She lived alone with her dogs, one of those people who saw the good in everyone. It didn't take long for Nayeri to earn her trust. He was charming, polite, and friendly, everything she didn't expect from a man accused of heinous crimes. Nayeri played his cards carefully. He told Noosa that his lawyer wasn't visiting him often enough and that he needed to know the lawyer's office location so someone from the jail administration could reach him. In reality, Nayeri already knew the lawyer's office was right across the street. But by asking for a map, he also got one of the jail's layout. Unaware of the real motive, Noosa agreed, thinking it was just a simple favor for a student who seemed nice enough. What she didn't realize was that she had just handed Nayeri the key to his escape. The map showed everything: the layout of the roof, the distance between the ventilation shafts, and, most importantly, the location where they could rappel down. Nayeri had successfully manipulated her into becoming an unwitting accomplice. Now, with the map in hand, the plan was closer to being realized. But time was running out, and the next move would determine everything. They had a hacksaw, a cell phone, and a detailed map. Everything they needed was within their grasp. The walls that once seemed impenetrable were slowly, but surely, beginning to crack. But as they stood at the base of the shaft, looking up at the towering ventilator above them, the reality hit hard. This wasn't going to be easy. 12 feet of iron bars and steel separated them from the rooftop, and from freedom. Yet Nayeri, always the strategist, had a solution for every obstacle. Where others saw an impassable barrier, he saw an opportunity. Bedsheets. In prison, something as simple as a sheet could become a lifeline, literally. They would use them as ropes, swinging them over pipes and pulling themselves up, inch by inch, toward their exit. It was a delicate operation, one that could be undone by the smallest mistake. But Nayeri's mind was always calculating every move. They tied the sheets tightly, shimmying up, while the other inmates and guards remained blissfully unaware. It wasn't supposed to be possible since the prison kept a strict count of everything issued to inmates, including the bedsheets. But somehow, whether by luck or sheer oversight, the guards missed something, and Nayeri seized on that mistake. Time was not on their side. The longer they stayed inside the walls, the higher the risk that any one of the other 68 prisoners could snitch on them. With a room full of men desperate for reduced sentences, there was no shortage of potential informants. The fear of exposure hung over them like a cloud, pushing them to move faster. Speed was everything. Every night, under the cover of darkness, Nayeri disappeared into the vent, working silently, cutting through the iron with precision. It wasn't just about getting out, it was about not getting caught. The constant need for secrecy slowed them down, but they had no other choice. It was a delicate balancing act, and it took months, 6 months of methodical work, before they could finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. After 5 long months of slipping past guards and sneaking into the inner walls, they broke through the last barrier. They were on the roof. They had made it. But their relief was short-lived. The rooftop wasn't the sanctuary they had hoped for. Cameras were everywhere, all over the recreational area. And if they made one wrong move, everything would be over in seconds. But luck was still on their side. The cameras were focused on the recreational area, not the section where they had emerged. For now, they were safe. Looking down, though, reality hit once again. 60 to 70 feet separated them from the ground below. A drop that would kill them if they weren't careful. Now, more than ever, they needed a way down. Nayeri, never wanting to leave any detail to chance, turned to Back once again and told him, "We need a rope." It was a simple statement, but it carried the weight of everything they had worked for. This time, the stakes were higher than ever. The rope would be their final tool, the last piece of the puzzle. Back had been reliable so far, but this was different. If he failed now, their entire plan would collapse. But Back knew how to deliver. Whether through drones, corrupt prison guards, or his gang connections, he made it happen. The rope was secured. With that, the final piece of the plan was in place. They agreed to make it happen the next night. This was it, the moment everything had led up to. They had risked their lives, manipulated guards, and outsmarted their fellow inmates, all for this one chance. They had it all worked out. The routine census checks happened like clockwork, one at 5 a.m. and the other at 8 p.m. If they were going to escape, it had to be in the dead of night. Santa Ana, a bustling city with federal buildings, coffee shops, and the sheriff's department just a stone's throw away, was the perfect location. Daylight wasn't an option. The D-Day came. At 8 p.m., after the head count, the three men set their plan in motion. This was it, go time. The window before the next count was their only chance. From the moment they squeezed through the vent, they were on borrowed time. Every step toward the roof brought them one step closer to freedom, or disaster. One by one, they crawled through the narrow corridors of the jail's underbelly. The roof was within reach, but the final obstacle stood tall, 5 stories between them and the ground below. The sheer height was staggering. One wrong move, and the consequences would be fatal. But after months of preparation, they weren't about to back down. Standing at the ledge, staring down at the dizzying drop, the men faced their greatest test. Would the rope hold? They hadn't done any tests, no rehearsals, no safety nets. If the rope snapped, if the makeshift pulley system gave way, they were done. If they survived the fall, they'd be right in front of the Orange County Sheriff's Department. Jonathan, the smallest of the three, was the first to descend. He gripped the rope tightly, inching his way down the 5-story drop. He made it. 1 down, 2 to go. Next was Back Dong, the resourceful one. He followed with the same tense precision. 2 out of 3, Nayeri plan was working. Then it was Nayeri's turn, the mastermind behind it all. As he descended, disaster nearly struck. 2 Orange County sheriff's officers stepped out for a cigarette break, and Nayeri froze, heart pounding. One wrong move, one glance up, and it was over. But luck was on his side. The guards finished their break and went back inside. Nayeri continued down, carefully lowering himself to the ground. They had done it, the impossible escape, but the clock was ticking. They had less than 5 hours before the next head count. Jonathan's gang connections came through with $900 in cash and a gun, a ticket to survival. But first, they needed new identities. Back made the call to Longma, a 71-year-old cab driver, convincing him to take them on a late-night shopping spree. They returned with supplies, new clothes, and a bottle of whiskey to calm their nerves. But things took a dark turn. They held a gun to Longma's stomach and forced him to drive them. What was supposed to be a quick getaway to Mexico turned into an unexpected detour. Instead of heading south, they had Longma drive them 400 miles north to the Bay Area. By January 22nd, they were far from where they intended to be. At the Orange County Jail, their escape went unnoticed at first. A man on the inside covered for them during the bed check, but after 15 hours, during the evening head count, their absence was discovered. Chaos erupted, and the media quickly picked up the story. A massive manhunt was launched, and soon the whole country was watching. Meanwhile, the escapees holed up in a motel in San Jose, trying to lay low. But their faces were all over the news, and they reveled in the chaos. But the longer they stayed, the more dangerous their situation became. Running low on cash, they turned to desperate measures. Back found a white van on Craigslist. They arranged to test drive it, and of course, never returned. Now they had a new vehicle, but Nayeri still had one loose end, Longma. The cab driver was a witness, and witnesses were liabilities. Nayeri coldly decided Longma had to die. But Back wasn't ready to go that far. He had grown close to Longma, and the thought of killing him was too much. Tensions between Nayeri and Back boiled over. They fought, with Nayeri having the upper hand physically, but Back's determination won the moral battle. Longma's life was spared, for now. The next morning, Nayeri and Jonathan went to get the van's windows tinted. Back took the opportunity to warn Longma that they were after him. Longma, realizing the danger, managed to escape and make his way back to Orange County. But Back, exhausted and done with the escape, made the decision to turn himself in. When Nayeri and Jonathan returned to the motel and found Back gone, they knew time was running out. With no plan and no allies left, they packed up and hit the road again. They were fugitives, prisoners of their own escape. Meanwhile, law enforcement was still chasing dead ends. But just as the wall seemed to be closing in, a break came from the most unexpected source. Longma and Back were spotted in Orange County. Back, ever the hustler, walked into a local hardware store and told the employees to call the police. He was trying to collect a reward for his own capture. It was a bold move. Back, who had always been resourceful, now offered up everything: the van's location, the whereabouts of Nayeri and Jonathan. It was the beginning of the end. Somewhere in San Francisco, Nayeri and Jonathan could feel it. They were on the run, but their luck had run out. A homeless man recognized their van parked near a Whole Foods, and the police were called. Within minutes, officers surrounded the van. Jonathan surrendered, but Nayeri made one last attempt to run. He sprinted desperately, but it was over. Police tackled him to the ground. His grand plan had collapsed. Nayeri, Jonathan, and Back were taken back into custody. Their brief taste of freedom was extinguished as quickly as it had come. The Orange County Jail was now under intense scrutiny. The sheriff came under fire for outdated procedures that had allowed the jailbreak. New measures were put in place: motion detection cameras, radio-tracked badges, and cell phone sniffing dogs. The fallout for the escapees was severe. Back was sentenced to 20 years for his role in the jailbreak. Jonathan awaited his fate in court. As for Nayeri, the mastermind, his trial was a mere formality. Already convicted for his brutal crimes, he was sentenced to life without parole. This was the end of the line for Nayeri. No more schemes, no more escapes. Unless, of course, he pulled off another impossible prison break. But for now, the doors of the Orange County Jail had slammed shut, and they weren't opening again. The daring escape of Hossein Nayeri and his crew ended in failure, as their brief taste of freedom was short-lived. Despite meticulous planning and manipulation, the law caught up with them, and they were returned to custody. The Orange County Jail revamped its security, while Nayeri, Jonathan, and Back faced the consequences of their actions. Nayeri's dreams of escaping his past were crushed, serving as a reminder that no matter how clever the plan, justice has a way of catching up. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe our channel.